Of course, during summer vacation also, a lot of work our school was doing for you people. Keeping the idea in mind that in the days to come, it would be really so difficult for all of us to have physical classrooms and physical teaching to take place. And therefore, we have come up with the idea of high-tech classrooms. And I think by now you must be very much used to this kind of classes. Don't get panic because we are covering complete portion, not only of English but also of all the subjects. And I hope with this new technological era, you people are actually going to get benefited a lot because these things are permanent there for you. Anytime you click on YouTube channel and you go to our website, I don't think you will find anything difficult to retrieve the classes which were there already for you on YouTube. Well, some portion has already been covered. We earlier recorded some lectures and then uploaded. Today it is live streaming, and I want all of you to be very, very active, very alert, and the fresh link has been sent to you people from where you are able to see me teach today. And what I want you to do is, in the chat box, whenever you feel there is a point that you need to be clarified, you can mention that point against your name. If you are mentioning, even good for me. So this thing, if you can keep it in mind, I think it will make the class very much interactive. Because in actual class, when you people are there, the environment is actually so cozy, so comfortable, and we are very happily interacting with each other. And because of this, the class becomes very much lively. Of course, we miss you all and hope that everything gets all right and you will all be back there in your school on your empty benches. What I see now, all your smiling faces with rapt attention, you would be there. But the same sort of attention do I expect from you at this moment. Keep this attention intact, and right from today onwards, whenever the schedule is there, I hope you all must have got the schedule. Whenever such scheduled class is there, we are going to go most probably live, because live classes, for me, I feel, if we are not there in the school, so live classes are a very good handy tool, and I think it is better than the recorded classes. So today, now we are going to start with one poem, Keeping Quiet. This is, I think, number 3. On number 3 is the poem in the curriculum, and the title of the poem is Keeping Quiet. Well, some of you people must be learning from me for the first time. I just want to tell you, first of all, what basically a poem is for. What happens when we read a poem, and why should we read a poem? And when we read actually poetry, I have seen most of the time students are not so much comfortable with it, especially when it comes to higher classes. So let us just try to understand, the first point, what is poetry? Actually, it helps us to understand and appreciate, and at the same time, it brings forth truth. This thing, bringing forth the truth, is something very beautiful, and which is done by the poet in a very artistic manner. And it is because of this reason, most of the learners of poetry, they find this is not very clear for them, because maybe they are not very much well versed with language. Many allusions are used over there, many poetic devices are used over there, and that is what makes a poem a bit difficult to understand. But I think if you are reading poems quite regularly, quite frequently, and you get used to what the way of poets' expression is, I think the message becomes a little clearer for you in the days to come. And one of the important thing is, what is the function actually of a poem? So it is actually to please, to move and to transport. This means when you transport, you take the reader to another world, to the world of the imagination of the poet. And from there the poet speaks of the reality, maybe of the truth that he speaks of. Sometimes the poetic are of aesthetic value. That means it pleases us because of the beauty that is depicted there in the poem, because of the poetic speeches which are used over there. That makes the poem beautiful. There are some poems which are not very rich in all these things. They are very simple, but at the same time they are difficult. The reason is the poet uses few words, and those few words are difficult for the reader to understand, because the reader has to get into the mind of the poet. That is, the reader must try to understand what may be the point of view of the poet. And if the reader is able to do so, he is not going to find the poem difficult later on. One more thing, all the poems, I think I must say the genre of poetry itself is quite comprehensive, and therefore the interpretation cannot be exact what you feel or what according to you is the interpretation. A poem or the lines of the poem can be interpreted differently. It is the critical appreciation of the poem that most of the time actually helps the reader to understand. Well, you all be ready with the text in your hand, and I am going to read out the poem first of all. By this, you may also be able to understand how a poem should be read, because the way something is read, the way something is said, it is the way something is to be understood. The emphasis on words, the meaning therefore, because of the emphasis, it becomes clear. Anyways, I am going to begin just the reading of the poem, and later on we are going to shift to the PPT presentation. When PPT presentation would be given, only the screen of PPT would be shown to you, and after all explanation is done, I'll again get back to you in front of the camera, and whatever would be some questions of yours, I'll pick up some of those questions and will give you explanation. I hope today itself we will be able to complete this poem, but please do understand whatever the worksheets are given to you time and again, on the link which is provided by AES. All those worksheets must be completed. It is compulsory, because you don't know, and even we cannot say what may happen next. So whatever the record we were told by our department, we must definitely see to it that it is kept ready. So all the worksheet number wise, you also name the worksheet of which chapter it is, and then you send it on the link provided to you. So this will help us understand what work we had asked you to do, and then we will be able to assess it. Well, I am reading the poem, and after this we are going to shift to PPT. The poem is Keeping Quiet. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep quiet still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment, without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with grass, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving and for once do nothing perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now, I'll count up to 12 and you keep quiet and I'll go. Well, here ends the reading of the poem. You might see some drops of sweat. You try to understand our school is putting all efforts, and let these efforts not go waste at the cost of one's health also. Our team is working for you people, and let it be fully utilized by you all. That is the only purpose. So now I shift to PowerPoint presentation. Of course, this presentation is also available on AES website. You might have downloaded it sometime. I'll explain to you, what is there in those PPTs, and by that I'll explain to you the meaning. Well, at the end of this presentation, you can put your questions in the chat, so that the team is already there. Your attendance is also being registered, and those questions I would like to explain to you. Here I am moving towards the PPT. Yeah, and this PowerPoint presentation will be just like bullet presentation, and this will help you understand in nutshell. So the poem is Keeping Quiet, written by Pablo Neruda. Of course, it is for your class. If we want to know something about the introduction of the poem, so this poem actually is an anti-war poem. Now, in the present scenario, this anti-war situation is something which is very much relevant. Recently, there has been, cross-border attack between China and India, and we lost our brave soldiers, and these martyrs, we pay homage to them. Through this poem, what we understand is the poet does not want any war. He is against war, and so this poem, you can just find out when you read this poem out, he wants somewhat kind of silence. War is not silence. After the war there is silence, and that violence is killing. That silence is, very much overpowering, and it may not give us the kind of peace that we had been expecting. So by this, you say, since it is an anti-war poem, the poem is with the important message that the world does not want any war, it wants peace. Next is what the poet is actually concerned about. So he is concerned about violence, cruelty to animals, and plight of manual workers. So it's not just about war. That is the only thing you cannot say is there in the poem. Beyond war, there are themes like violence. Violence can be of any kind of the violence that generally takes place in the countries in the name of different issues. So this kind of violence. Then cruelty to animals. Cruelty to animals, like nowadays there are acts to protect animals, to preserve wildlife. So the poet is also giving us the message that let us not harm anything that is part of nature. The supreme part of nature we consider is human being, and the human being itself is doing some acts of violence. It is doing some cruelty on animals, and there are people who are undergoing a lot of plight, that is suffering, sorrow, and this suffering he is totally against of. And he says, according to the poet, it must get depleted. So how it would it would come down. How somebody can get rid of this plight. So this is how the poet is going to tell us at the beginning of the poem. Let us keep quiet for some moments. This, I think, the poet is giving us a kind of technique, a pattern as to how we can, just find out a solution. Because generally we feel there is a problem, and the problem is also growing up. It is expanding, and its magnitude and multitude is increasing gradually. So how to get rid of it? The simplest solution is you just don't think of the problem. Of course it is there. Try to find out some sort of solution. So generally it happens that we always approach people with more problems. We are restless most of the time as soon as we get some or the other kind of problem. But through this poem, we also get a message that we should not get troubled by all this. What we need is be composed. Let us be quiet for some time, and this quietness of some time will lead us to complete peace of mind. Next is it gives solution to many social, political, and religious problems. So how it gives solution to various problems? See, the problems first of all actually we get it is because of the crossing of boundaries. Most of the time, like the Indian land is being encroached by our neighboring countries. So this is one political issue, and this issue pertains to the point over here called, political solutions would be required. And next is the social issues. Like in the country, we find a lot of disparity between the rich and the poor, and the condition of even the wretched people. How to get solution to these problems, even the rich and the poor? Do you think that those who are rich, they are all happy? I don't think they are. Recently the news was there about an actor, Sushant Singh, and he committed suicide. So do you think that he had any sort of problem with related to his riches? No, it was not so. It was some psychological issue, or you can say there are still many people who might interpret that incident as what not Sushant Singh have. He had everything. He had money, he had name, he had fame. Because for a poorer person, all these things he doesn't have. He lacks all those things. And somebody has and still commits a suicide. Isn't it? So it's a kind of a shock to such a person, one who misses all these things. So the social disparities, apart from this, there are communal issues here under this word itself called social problems. And then there are some religious problems. Everyone is of the opinion that mine is the best religion. No religion can be compared with it. I agree. See, yours is the best. But you should not demean somebody else's religion. And that is what a good society, a civilized society should be like. And we should all be, of such frame of mind that we should have enough of respect for somebody else's religion, for somebody else's culture, for somebody else's, linguistic approaches. And if we have this kind of sympathy developed, I think we are not going to face problem with person to person. Then later on it may turn out to be a political issue, and that political issue can turn out to be a social issue, isn't it? So let it be whatever, social, political or religious. The poet is of the opinion that we all can get solution if we can follow just very few simple techniques. I think during this time you all must have heard of various yoga gurus. They must have told you if you can take this pranayam or you can go for this exercises, you are going to get a little saved from the attack of coronavirus. So what is this? This is something called a kind of technique, a kind of way of handling the situation. The poet has given solution to such a big problem that the world is facing the problem because of wars, and the poem is anti-war poem. And how he has given the solution in just few lines. Of course, we are going to come to it. We are just talking about what are the things included in the poem. So it is generally you will find the Poet has given the solution in self-introspection. If we can do this self-introspection, which we generally do not do, and because we feel nothing is wrong with me. If whatever is wrong, it is only with the other person, and here lies the problem, and therefore here lies the solution too. So it is not about him, or it is not about her, it's not about them, it's about me. So it is something about, if I just undergo a process of conjecturing over, pondering over, thinking over what I did or what I should have behaved like, then I think the solution to the issue of certain issues like personal issues, we say, or the social issues that come in, may get solved. So according to the poet, it is this important point called self-introspection can solve the problems of society, political problems, and also the religious problems. So this poem is able to help us understand and get us clue as to how we can solve some problems. Next is, everyone should look within, and that is the part of introspection. I think this is what we all generally do not do, and I think this is all possible only when we meditate. It is gradually when we practice and we become master in meditation, it makes us nobler, it makes us get enhanced, and this gradually leads us to, this all instead, I must say, because of self-introspection that meditation infuses in us. Our mind becomes quiet, and because our mind is not agitated, because it is not disturbed, we are able to, find solution to various problems. Next is, the poet is able to, just look at some issues. Of course, through those issues, we are able to understand many others. So he points out just those few issues, with what wrong lies, what went wrong, what goes wrong, because of which the problems do take place, and who is the wrongdoer. So if we understand who is the wrongdoer, we can keep away from such, character or person. This cleanses every heart. This means the process of introspection is so powerful and so healing that it cleanses our heart, it makes our heart clean of malice, clean of anger, clean of hatred. The poem gives us this wonderful message that if we are able to cleanse our heart, we are going to find solace, happiness, and pleasure in the things that we do. You might find there are some people who devoted themselves to the noble cause, like Sonu Sood, one of them recently. He has spent a lot of his money, whatever he had earned. So for those people who were stranded up here and there, he gave them, bought them tickets, either by train or by flight, and got them reach their destination. So the money that he had earned, he used it in such concrete and in such social way, and because of which he might have experienced a peace of mind which probably is not experienced by those who are rich, but they store all their money either in their homes or in the bank lockers. So it is something about experience. So let us experience, how by undergoing the introspection, good work can be done, and it ennobles all people. So I think I have repeatedly told, this poem is able to, teach us things like peace, anti-war sort of issue, something like the issues of society, issues of politics. These all can get solution if we can just remain quiet for some time. And I bet, speaking is still easier than becoming quiet, than remaining quiet instead, I must say. See, because you are angry, you can be quiet. That is another tool. But it is not, the poet is not making you to be quiet because you are angry with something, because you are angry about, something, because angry of some issue So are you quiet? He is not expecting this negative sort of quietness. He wants that quietness which comes with all happiness, and because of that we are all going to experience, the peace of mind. Well, such beautiful poem is of course written by Pablo Neruda, but whether we know it, and what do we know about this great poet, because it's not the only poem that you must read. You can also read many such poems that this great poet has written. He is a modern poet. See, you can just find it out here. He was born in 1904 and died in 1973. Modern day poet. He is not of the age of Shakespeare or Wordsworth or Coleridge or Shelley or Byron. He is a modern day poet, and he used a pen name called Pablo Neruda. An actual name of his is of Naphtali Ricardo Reyes Basalto. He was born in the town of Parral in Chile. You can just Google the map where the child is. 10 minutes. And there was he born. And there you just look at the map. I think it is in the southern part of America. This country lies. There was he born. Neruda's poems are full of easily understood images. Here I would like to make one point clear to you. What images are basically known as. Images are like some image of an object, image of a scenery, or I would say a picture of a building, a scene which is created. These kind of images, this kind of pictures. These pictures, they are full of meaning. See, everyone is not able to appreciate paintings. Sometimes we come to know that for an ordinary person, such an ordinary painting is sold at a very high price, and we call such people who buy such kind of things little crazy sort of people. Of course, they might be crazy to some extent because they do not match our way of thinking. Their interpretation must be little higher. They must have seen something great in that work, and that is why they were able to appreciate the beauty of such paintings. So these paintings, these pictures, and some objects, some scenes which are depicted there in the poem, these things, they are able to evoke different meanings for us. Like, just I'll give a very ordinary and common example. A red light shown, it indicates us danger. A green light indicates everything is all right, and we can move ahead, we can go ahead. By this small indications, we are able to understand, the meanings. Of course, they are day-to-day, symbols, and so we were able to understand them. But beyond that, the poet uses certain things. One of the examples I'll just quote, of course it will come in the explanation. The man gathering salt. The moment we read these few words, man gathering salt, it creates a mental picture in the mind. That is a kind of image where we might imagine that some laborer is there who is gathering salt with some sort of tool. And we also get the kind of image, it must be at the seashore, or it may be a place closer to the water body. And this image is enough for us to create a mental picture. And now what we can interpret, what we can understand. Whether any rich man does this work? No. Any common, any poor people, any laborer has to do this kind of work. So by this what we understand, this image of course is there, but what does this image evoke? It evokes the meaning of a poor man's plight. His life is with this kind of difficulty, that he doesn't have the source of earning by very sophisticated you can say employment. He is busy in a kind of work of salt gatherers, and that might even hurt his hands by holding the tool for so long and for so many days, and because of which he might get some injuries. But who has taken care of it? Because the one who has given him the work, he needs only work, whether it's hurting his hands, or whether it has given him pain, or he suffered during the hot season. And those things do not matter to the one who has employed this fellow for this work. And who is able to understand? Probably the only one who is undergoing this kind of suffering. See, words were only few. Salt gathering man. And the image was only one. And by this, we were able to understand, at least this. Maybe you are able to interpret it a little differently, and you might also get, some other interpretation. All interpretations which are, which may lead to the final meaning of the poem, they are all correct. Well, so his poems, they are easily understood because the poems are not written in very tough language. The language is very simple, and it evokes images which make them so less beautiful. It is not, the image, makes it less beautiful. The images are also very of simple kind. That may be one of the reasons why, it is said it does not make it, extremely beautiful. And even the language is not so, you can say, aesthetic sort of language, or generally the common phrase which is used, hi-fi language. It is not even that hi-fi language which is used. So the language is so simple, and with such simple language, if the poet has written poetry, how was he the winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1970? See, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1970. When he passed away in 1973, that is just 2 years before he met his death, he had won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Our idea of languages is somebody when speaks in the kind of vocabulary which is not easily understood by us is the beautiful language. It is a wrong concept. The purpose of language is communication. Whatever the message you are giving, it should be properly understood by the listener. You may use high frequency vocabulary when it comes for the kind of audience you have, but not for everyone. And therefore, though the poet has written this poem in very simple language with easily understood images, and throughout he must have written, but he has been able to win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1971. At least this much we know something about the poet, and we would be able to understand, quite in a better manner. Of course, you might be sending some of your queries. I'll just explain to you the first paragraph, stanza over here today, just few lines over here. And after that, you put some of your queries, and whatever the queries might have already come, we'll just discuss. But I wish you put some of your queries. That will help us understand. You are still there in touch with we people. The few lines they read is, now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. Still is without any motion, without any movement, with all quietness. So don't you think that it is something very strange that somebody just to a child when says, you just close your eyes and I'll give you a gift. This kind of idea I feel as if the poet is giving us. You just count, we'll all count up to 12 and we'll all keep still. You might have noticed in primary, your teachers must have told you sometimes, put finger on your lips. If you had not kept the finger on the lips, I don't think that you could have kept quiet in primary. Maybe later on when you came to secondary and senior secondary, without putting finger on your lip, you must have been able to keep quiet. But when you were in primary, you did not know how to keep quiet, and that was one of the ways. And similarly here, the poet says, you let us count up to 12 and then we'll keep still. You might also notice sometimes when we are not able to sleep, we just count number of times. 100, then again we repeat it, again you just go on recounting it. This is how we get into another world. We get ourselves transported and we get into the world of sleep and dream. Here the poet is making us do. See, it has never taken place that we have kept quiet. So there should be something that make us quiet. So what can it be? Let it be a kind of mantra of just counting 12. And it is such simple thing that he has told us. So the poet says, this is one of the techniques that you can follow. You just count up to 12 and you will find that when you count up to 12 with your eyes closed, probably you will find that you are quiet. For once on the face of the earth, and let's not speak in any language. Let us try to understand these two lines. That is, on the face of the earth, that means for the sake of earth, for the sake of humanity, for the sake of the whole world, let us speak nothing. Let us speak, no language of yours, may it be your mother tongue, maybe it's your national language, may it be your international language, or whatever language you have been, speaking. Just speak nothing. Because we have been speaking, and maybe because of that, more issues have come up. See, the wise people do not speak more. They prefer silence, and therefore their words are only few words, and they are wise words. And beyond that, the poet goes and says, let us not speak for some time. And by not speaking some time, we are able to understand more things. And let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. That means he wants complete, standstillness, no movement at all. And by doing all this, we are going to get transported into another reality, another world. And let us, just do these few lines today. And in my next class, we are going to get explanation of other lines as well. This explanation, I hope for today is quite enough. And I was expecting some doubts to come, or maybe that you find Kapil sir is quite enough to clarify all your doubts in one go, but it is never so. The more you read it, the more difficulties you will come across. And today, of course, we try to understand basically what poetry is and what function actually does it do. Next, we try to understand the background of the poem, even introduction of the poem, what is it all about. And we had gone to the reading of the full-length poem and then explanation of just few lines. First, initial some 2-3 lines, and later on, one complete stanza we have taken. So, I think here, if any difficulty you have come across, you can just let me know. But the core of the poem, let me just repeat it once. It is all about, let us, practicing a technique by which we are going to keep quiet. And this, if we just practice for some days, we are going to get into the process of introspection. This introspection would help us learn and understand that always by speaking something or by using any particular language, our problems are not solved. So sometimes it's quite good that we keep mum, we say nothing about the issue, about the problem, and everything is, it goes all right. I only see here your attendance, and so far there has been no question. Anyways, so today's class we are ending up here, and in the next class we are going to continue with the same poem and further explanation. I hope you read out, and some questions are there at the end of the poem. Even those questions also you have a glance at, so that you will have some doubts as to how you are going to answer these questions. See, we just read few few lines, and we were able to get a lot of explanation. This is what generally happens. So whenever you are writing an answer to a question of a poem, you will be faced with this sort of difficulty. If you can do today, like whatever class of mine ended with whatever content, you just make brief notes of yours, you will have a lot of information at the end of all your classes. Thank you and good day.